And today we have Yogi from Finland here with us, and he will tell us more about what self-sovereign identity means in the MyData context. And they're doing some amazing projects here. And I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to have Yogi here with us today. And he will tell us more about what this means in a global context, but also especially in a country like Finland, which is really advanced on many levels in technology. So it will be really interesting to know, Yogi, what you have to say about self-sovereign identity in that space. Before we go into that, in the next slide, we have a summary. Yogi, if you can change to that slide, about basically what SSI Meetup is about. So first thing for us is really we want to help with SSI Meetup to empower global SSI communities. And we want these communities to be open. So that means that everyone can participate, companies, social movements, any platforms that are interested in SSI. And we want all this information to be shared with the Creative Commons license by share alike. That basically means that the presentation that Yogi will be giving you today, you will be able to use it globally wherever you want. The only thing you will have to do is to give credit. It basically means give credit to Yogi for sharing it, that he shared this presentation with you, and to SSI Meetup for sharing it with you. And we will put up a post where we will be able to see the video we're recording right now, where you will be able to download the Google Slides down to your computer. And this will allow you to do the same presentations or combinations of all these presentations with your own material and your own knowledge to create local SSI meetups in your country, in your region, or in your city. And that's about it. So we can jump into what Yogi has to say now, which is in the next slide. And thank you very much, Yogi, for being with us here today.
Thanks for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here. I watched the other 2 episodes that you made with Drummond, and definitely this initiative of sharing the goodness of self-sovereign identity, that's something that is really needed in this world. So maybe a word of myself. So I'm from Finland. People call me Yogi. My real name is Antti, but that's a nickname since ages. I'm a researcher at Aalto University, and my research topic is personal data management, and more specifically, how to change personal data from this currently dominant organization-centric model to such where people would have control over their own data. And that's about that's the MyData initiative that we are pushing here in Finland, but it's definitely nothing that we invented. It's happening all over the places. People are having the same kind of ideas. And besides being researcher at the university, I'm also trustee at the Sovrin Foundation. So you have been hearing about Sovrin already if you participated in the earlier episodes, and if not, then better check them out. And I'm also organizing a big conference on MyData. I will have a minute of advertisements in the end of this presentation, but it would be really pleasure to see you all, or many of you, in Helsinki in Finland in the end of summer, end of August. And yeah, well, my background before coming to personal data issues, I was a long time advocate of open data, specifically government open data. And we brought this idea to Finland from elsewhere in UK and in US. There has been quite a long time already government pushing for opening the data resources that are collected, so that if they are paid by taxpayers' money, so that it could be used by everybody. And moving from there, quite easily you come to see the barriers of openness. So personal data should never be open data because it's by definition private. But on the other hand, there could be some similarities, like data is not worn when it's used. So when data is used more valuable it becomes, and that could apply easily also to personal data. But we don't want our personal data to be used by others without our willingness for that. but the movement, open data movement, kind of started to translate to that idea that maybe how could we open personal data, and opening it by giving individuals, us, control over our own data, so that I could decide where my data is used. So that's the basic idea of MyData. I will cover that briefly, the philosophical foundations of it, and then come to the topic of self-sovereign identity and how that matches together with MyData. So
Yogi, just one thing I forgot to mention. I mean, for any participants, please ask any questions during the presentation. So feel free just using the chat and for questions. And I'll be asking Yogi any of the questions you have. Sorry for interrupting, Yogi. So just to make clear that anyone can jump in at any moment.
Yes, I was just about to say the same. So I'm very happy to answer questions. It's give me direction to my presentation. I do see the chat here, even if I'm sharing the screen. I hope that it's not blocking the view of slides. I guess not.
No, it's fine. No, it works.
So,
it works.
So the vision of MyData is really to give control over our own data to people themselves. Currently, it's only that the organization set the agenda that, well, this organization collects your data, they may use it for personalized advertisement, or they may personalize the services, or then it's transactionally needed for something, but I cannot take that data and use it elsewhere. So the MyData movement really pushes to the idea that we could strengthen digital human rights, giving us people right to get our own data and use it for something that is beneficial for us, and that would at the same time be good for innovation in companies. They could build better services based on trust. So right now, very often when we speak about personal data, it's seen as a contradiction, so that you can either get to use the data, or then you can get privacy, but you cannot get both. So there are these big bad data giants that are collecting all our data and using it very efficiently, but also very in a gray way sometimes behind our backs. And then there are strict like privacy lobby that says that basically all personal data that is in circulation is potentially risk and harmful for us, and it would be better to store and record as little personal data as possible. And MyData aims to be kind of the progressive combination of having the benefits of using your personal data, but also keeping very, very strict level of privacy and data protection. You may have heard that in the European Union there is a new data protection regulation that's actually not so new. It came into force already 2 years ago, but now in this May the transition period ends, and it becomes enforceable, so that companies might be charged quite big fees if they break the law. So that's the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. And quite often in the European debate, it's said that many companies are opposing the new regulation, that it just would kill all the innovation in personal data because it becomes so hard. You need to ask consent for everything from the people, etc. But we do believe that when we have good and strict legal base, that's really the starting point, and by building solutions that make the data management transparent and clear and under individuals' own control, we can really also get the benefits of using the data in strict regulation and environment. And that's where MyData is heading at. And what is really new in this general data protection regulation is Article 20. So if you want to Google GDPR Article 20, that's about data portability. So now, for first time, people have rights to actually get their personal data in digital format from some register keeper or some company or organization that collects your data. So I can go to my retail chain and ask, for example, that I want to get all my loyalty card data, or I can ask from my mobile phone operator that I want to get all my data that they are storing about me. And I actually did this earlier times before this GDPR. I asked from my own mobile phone operator if they could share me what data they have collected of me, and what did they do? They sent me physically over snail mail like a big pile of paper, and it had my coordination, latitude and longitude positions from the last 6 months. So not very useful getting in the paper format. But nowadays, or in the future, we have the rights to get our data in digital format, and that's also the stepping stone for creating better services out of our own data. So what kind of infrastructure is needed then to manage these new kinds of personal data flows? So right now we speak about API ecosystems that every company that is more or less digital should have already some sort of APIs out there, and different services can be interconnected. In a way, that's very good way to scale up. It grows naturally. When there is need to connect, then the connections are made. But on the other hand, it's quite chaotic and messy. It's not easy for the developers, because when somebody changes an API, then all the services that used to be using it kind of get broken. And from the perspective of us, the people whose data is out there, it's really impossible to know what kind of permissions we have given, who is actually having access to your data or not. For example, I just after this latest Facebook scandal with the Cambridge Analytica, I went to check how many services are using or where I have over time given access to my Facebook data by using the Facebook login, basically. So the list was, I guess it was 215 services, and that's over maybe even almost 10 years, and I had no clue that I had given so many permissions, and that's only in Facebook. So the same thing happens all over the places. So this kind of current reality is really hard for individuals to operate and understand where your data is flowing. So some sort of middle way improvement to that is then at least from the developer perspective, it's easier if there comes some sort of aggregators that collect data from many sources and create harmonized APIs that are well maintained, and the application developers can get all sorts of data of me from one source. And those are, of course, very good honeypot places to be such a central place in the personal data ecosystem. And what's the MyData model there bringing? We are asking who should be in the center of people's personal data. So we think that it should be the persons themselves. So I should be the center of ecosystem of my personal data, and that's the model of MyData, and how to make it happen. So obviously I cannot, I'm flesh and blood, so I cannot make the connections myself, but ideally, I would like to, for example, if there's an application that could make use of my banking data, let's say some sort of financial dashboard, I would like to be in a position where I can just give the permission. Yes, I want this new application to have access to my personal data from banking so that I can see my financials in one place. But in the same way, I would like to be able to take that permission away if I get tired of that service, or if it's not being good for me anymore. And I want to be able to have this kind of control over the different data flows easily. And for that, I need some sort of tools, and that's getting closer to our topic of self-sovereign identity. So how to make this technically happen? So there are different roles in this personal data ecosystem. So first of all, there is me or you, the identity owner, the person. And then there is the data providing services. So in this my earlier example, for example, the bank, they are the data source. In the identity jargon, they are called issuers. I don't really know why, because I'm not coming from the identity world originally. I'm coming from the data world, and we see now the identity and data world merging kind of. Anyways, issuer or data source. And then there are obviously the services that are using the data, like in the example, for example, the financial dashboard application, and that's in the identity jargon, it's called verifier. Again, for me, it's a little bit weird. I get it. I've been reading the identity jargon enough so that I can speak it and read it, but on the layman's terms, I would call them data using services. And then the question is that how and where I as a person get the tools to actually operate my my personal data. So I recommend you to check out the earlier webinars from Drummond Reed and what kind of standardization there is coming up now. But basically the endpoint how one individual is part of this this network is that he or she needs to have an agent or identity hub, what he or she controls in the end device, maybe on the mobile phone or your computer or any other device. And we think that there should be also, we are thinking this definitely from not only from the technical perspective, but also from the perspective of how to make it happen in reality, in business reality also. So we think that people are not going to in masses start just uploading and downloading these agent software in their mobile phones. So maybe many people will do, but even more people might be willing to get this as a service. So there is a role for this operator that offers these agents for people. So that's what's called agency here. And yes, speaking about the business, so first of all, I think having this kind of interoperability in personal data ecosystem working, it needs to have solid technical base. It needs to have a good regulation and legal base, and it needs to have the business incentives in right place. And then on top of everything, it needs to be so societally beneficial and good. So we are speaking about BLT sandwich: business, legal, technical, and the society. And we are trying to look from all of these angles. So not only technical and not only legal, not only business, and definitely we don't want to forget the societal impact, because it has been shown so many times that engineers especially are getting so excited about new technologies and thinking that they are solving some sort of problems in the world, but they might be actually creating new problems. So kind of having this balance thinking there. But now I speak about business perspective. So how do we create open markets for personal data where individuals could be in control of their own data? So this, let's take an example. For example, that I have my loyalty card, or even multiple loyalty card to different retail chains, and then I find out about this cool application that would help me to make better choices of in my grocery shopping, healthier choices, or maybe I'm more interested in the ethical shopping, or interested in saving money. But I find out about the shopping assistant application. So if you want this shopping assistant application would need to get access to my grocery shopping data that is collected by the retail chain under their loyalty card scheme. So whenever I go and shop and pay and use the loyalty card, they actually record all the things that I'm buying, and this data could be used in this smart new imaginary shopping assistant application. And what would need to happen that this is reality? So first of all, the data source, the in this case the loyalty card company, they need to provide data under my permission to this application. Then of course this application, which is the data using service, they need to be able to use the data. So there needs to be some sort of understanding of the content, semantics, etc. And they need to make some sort of value out of it. And then on top of it, I, as a person, I need to be willing to use the shopping assistant application. Maybe I'm not interested in it at all, so it would ruin the thing. Then I need to give my permission to use my data from the loyalty card company. And then I need to be connected to the right kinds of data sources. So in this case, I need to be a customer of this loyalty scheme. And these three requirements to make such a use case viable, actually they kind of limit each other. So maybe there is millions of customers of the loyalty card company, but only hundreds of thousands of them would be ever willing to use this shopping assistant application. And out of those, maybe some part of people just are not interested in giving the permission or managing their personal data. And that's a problem when we think of real use cases that spread across the different areas in personal data usage. So what needs to happen is that there really needs to be value that is higher than the costs for each and every one of these roles. So the data sources, data using services, and we as individuals need to have value on this. And if I turn it to the identity jargon, it means that the issuers need to have more value than there is the cost for the issuers to join the network, and the verifiers, they need to have more value by joining to the network than are the costs, and then the identity owners need to have also more value that they bother even being part of there. And usually this is what we have been doing in our research program. We have studied these most common interests. So for the data sources or the issuers, in this case, the loyalty card company, they definitely they want to keep their customers. They are already in a way in powerful position. They have the customers because otherwise they would not have the customers' data either. So they are by definition they are in good position and they want to stay in good position. Why would they open the data to be used by somebody else, even their competitor? So they need to, there is the benefit that they could be more trusted and they could work more transparently. That might be good for their brand. But they do want to benefit from being on the origin as the original source of data, also like money-wise. And what they need to do, they need to invest in new technology. Maybe they need to maintain some APIs or something like that. And they are actually in risk of losing customers if they have used the data as locking mechanism for customers. And then the data using services, in this case, the application, the shopping assistant application, what do they want? They want quality data. They don't want to bother their customers with data collections and all sorts of questions of asking permission to data, but they want quality data and for personalizing their services. So that's what they want. And costs for them is that if they need to pay for the data, and they of course need to maintain and market and build the service. And it's quite often like misunderstood that what are really the motivations for people. I think the most common is that we want easiness. We want seamless services that just work like a magic. And I think privacy and security are valuable for people. They are making the difference. If I see two exactly as good services and one is more, I perceive the one more privacy keeping, then I might choose that one. But it's not really a driver for masses. So the easiness of digital services is the driver for people. And on the other hand, we should not forget that actually managing your own data is time and effort. We need to make it really easy because it's costly for people. People don't really care about their data so much that they would like to invest lots of time on managing it. And yeah, people are then paying. I might be paying for the service of this good shopping assistant in this example. So what is then the solution to get these kind of new use cases of personal data flourishing in the world? So in all of these cases, it's easy if you are the big company that actually is the source of the data and creates the service that uses the data, and you have the customer. So if you have every thread in your hands, you can do it yourself. But here we are speaking about ecosystems and networks where data is coming from one place and it's used elsewhere, and the customer is also circling between different organizations. So how to make this work? We think that the role of the agency or the operator is really crucial there to drive for the business ecosystem to be built in balanced way. And here I want to make an analog. So think of the world where there could be only one phone company in the world. So you can make phone calls only to friends that are connected to the same phone company. Or think of the world where there would be only one bank. You can pay on the cashier only if the coffee shop is connected to the same bank where you have the account. So that kind of thinking is not uncommon nowadays in the world of platforms. So we do have only one Facebook, and you cannot connect with your friends that are in some other social media platform through Facebook. So there is this kind of one platform thinking, and that was also in the beginning of the phone era. There was the Bell system. Bell wanted to create one system that works everywhere. And also the standardization history, you might not know, but Finland has very strong history in the standardization of mobile phone systems. So before GSM standard, there was NMT, which was Nordic Mobile Telephony, and that was a common standard between the Nordic countries, Finland and Sweden, and some others. And while that standardization was being done in Finland, there was the local telecom operators active there. Motorola came to visit in the standardization buddies here and said that, well, you can do the standardization, but meanwhile we are going to sell the Motorola system to the whole world. So they had the idea of having one platform, one that rules the all, and we don't want to see such thing happening on personal data, that there would be only one platform that is actually making the connectivity to work. We want that there are several platforms that are competing with each others, like the banks are competing and the telco operators are competing, and together still they are interoperable. So I can go here in Finland in a bank and put money on account of my friend, who can then take it out from the Brazilian bank. Or I can, if Alex sends me his phone number, I can make a phone call, and I'm quite sure that we do not share the same mobile phone operator. So somehow magically the phone connects. And this kind of magic is what we want to get happening in the personal data world as well. So that if I am connected to one operator, and maybe the loyalty card company is connected to another operator, and the application that uses my data might be from other country and connected to completely another operator. So these kind of data transactions should be happening without centralizing the management in one place. And this is really important in order for it to scale. There are the network effects. So we don't really expect everybody to be connected in one operator or agency in the other identity language. It really must be possible for me to change agency without breaking the things. I want my applications and services to continue working even if I change one from one agency to another. And now we get to the business of self-sovereign identity and distributed ledger technologies. So basically, we have done this research in Finland, and now it's coming already to commercial applications as well. And it's easy to build this kind of one platform, but it's not easy to build something that is interoperable among competing companies. So we need some sort of baseline technology that is shared by everybody. And that there the self-sovereign identity is really like spot on, because in business wise, if somebody is the identity provider for everybody in the network, that creates such unbalanced business position that it never leads to real competition between different players. So only way to get into this real competitive ecosystem is that if people are actually managing and holding their own identity, and they are not dependent on any identity provider, and they can choose services and move around freely. So we think that self-sovereign identity and perhaps the payments systems like tokenized payments are the way to create balanced business network in personal data ecosystem. And then the question that often comes at this point is that why do you really need this agency? Why wouldn't you just have this completely decentralized manner so that individuals would have the agent software in their mobile phone, and there is no different kind of service provider in between, and applications could connect directly to the ledger, and also the data using services could connect directly to the ledger. So technically, there is no.
I'm just wondering, maybe you can explain a little bit more the concept of agency and what agencies are and how, why they're relevant, because I'm not sure this is clear to everyone once they will listen to it. Maybe you can expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, I try, and it's definitely helpful if you ask when you don't get some parts here. I'm just a little bit jumping maybe too fast, so stop me if you don't get it. So maybe I can show, it's a pity that I didn't take these other slides with me. It's not on this slide set, but the concept of you might be familiar with the self-sovereign identity, with the deeds decentralized identifiers, and then decentralized identifiers are managed with some sort of software agent, where you have your keys and you actually manage the deeds and relationships, etc. in your wallet. So that's kind of the basic understanding that you might get by checking the previous 2 episodes of this great SSI meetup webinars by Drummond Reed. He did an excellent job on explaining those. So the jump from one agent, you have the software agent in your or the wallet application in your mobile phone, for example, and jump from there to the world of agency, a organization that offers this as a service for people. I'm coming to that point that technically you could connect to the ledger just by having the software agent installed on your phone. But the really business question is that where on earth this software agent comes to your phone. And there we think that the agency is the way to think that these are providing on masses this connectivity to people and organizations, so that they can be connected in this identity network that is actually giving the base for personal data sharing. So I'm listing here a couple of reasons why we would need agencies, which I call operators. That's just a terminology issue. So first of all, having separate organizations that are in such position, it's really, we don't have self-sovereign identity in the world by today. It's not there. You cannot go and just have it and use it for anything. So it's still very early phase, and how to get from early phase technological ideas to solid markets where that technology is being built in and adopted in masses. So you need market drivers, and these operators that have position like telecom operator, they don't add advertisements in your phone calls. They make their money of providing this connectivity to masses. So if there are organizations that are not really interested or do not care about the data, but they want to provide the connectivity and make their business out of that, those are driving the market so that this self-sovereign identity actually scales up. And other reason is that these operators could create interoperability beyond these transactions that are on the ledger. So they could create trust framework among themselves that state, for example, what kind of business rules there are, who is going to pay to whom, and etc. And they reduce fragmentation. It becomes, the system becomes in a way simpler for people to understand, that you don't need to figure out which one of these 275 different wallet applications you want to install and which one you trust. If there is a little bit some organizations, maybe, I mean, who would be interested in being in this kind of position of agencies. There are organizations that are existing there. There are, for example, banks or telecom operators, which I'm using as an example. They might become, since they already have a massive customer base, they could become providers of connectivity in this personal data sharing network, which would be based on self-sovereign identity. And also
Yogi,
they would facilitate. Yeah.
One question here from Jonathan. He's asking, are there any good examples of any existing cloud agents?
I think that good examples of existing providers of agents, I wouldn't say that I know. You might take some like examples that are a bit similar, but yeah, I would answer that no, not at the moment, not in the way that we think it in self-sovereign identity. We are still very on the early phases. So this is conceptualizing the business part of self-sovereign.
Yeah, Paul is mentioning a Rackspace, I guess in this context. But all right, so let's see what keeps on coming in.
Well, that's not familiar to me. You can please share the link.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So, okay, then one more reason that why to have this kind of system where there are some bigger providers of these agents is kind of systemic trust that you don't need to trust in one particular organization. You don't need to trust in your telecom operator in order to trust that telephony works. You can just know that, okay, in the world there is this thing called mobile phone telephony, and you can choose to decide which one provides you the services. So it comes a little bit easier for people to understand and trust in these systems. So here I'm looking a couple of business reasons for or what these agencies could provide for these different parts of the ecosystem. So what could the agency provide for us, the individuals? So it could provide an API of me, so to say, possibility to share and give consent to data sharing between different services, and perhaps an easy use personal cloud, personal data storage. So that could be an offering for individuals. And then for the sources of data sources or these issuers, the agency could offer like big market possibility to cover the cost of the maintenance of the APIs and investments, if there is a possibility to, for example, get paid for the money, and the transactions could happen in the ledger. And also now I mentioned this data portability article in the GDPR, so there is actually legal backing for that data providers need to anyways share the data in digital format for people if they come and ask for it. So this agency could provide mechanisms for doing that in easy and cost-efficient way. And for the services that are using data, these agencies could provide legal compliance and technically easy connection to data sources. So personal data is becoming a big liability now due to more stricter regulations. So if there is a way to prove that yes, I'm using this data because this person actually gave their permission to use the data, and if you can prove that the permission is there, so it gives you legal security. And this is kind of image that I'm constantly trying to evolve. So I am from the in the board of trustees of Sovrin Foundation, and we are running a bigger project in Finland where there are 6 companies building applications that use Sovrin for personal data management purposes, and they have different pilot use cases that are currently they are kind of separate, but we see the future, since they are all using the Sovrin network, that they could then become kind of jointly interconnected, so that if I'm customer of one of these 6 companies or 2 of these 6 companies, I could get access to different use cases. And so here's the layer what Sovrin brings here. It's the trust framework and trust network, and then there is the ledger layer 2, which Sovrin is based on the Hyperledger Indy, but basically anybody could take the Hyperledger Indy code base and make a different kind of network that is not the same as Sovrin. They could create other legal entity or other trust framework using the same ledger software. And then there is the level of these agencies that support or create these tools, and there is really important that there are these international standards like DIDs. I think that business-wise, the different players in the network, they want to support open standards, and they might be creating agents that are supporting multiple different ledgers. So DID standards work with Sovrin, but it works also with several other ledgers like Verse1 and Bitcoin and Ethereum. So basically, the agencies could build their technology so that it's based on the open standards, and then they the agents that are provided by these operators could work basically also in different ledger other than Sovrin. That's kind of separation of powers. I of course think that Sovrin Trust Framework is really solid and good base for building these things. But as if I would be now setting up the new mobile phone operator in this personal data world, would I choose Sovrin only, or would I choose open standards that can be then be matched to other ledgers? I would choose the open world. So that's kind of the thinking of separating these different levels of self-sovereign identity technologies, and what's the position of agencies there. I think that was last slide of my more or less business technical part of it. I would like to share in the end a little bit of what's actually happening in the MyData world. So MyData is a global community. So there is a conferences running every year, and there is community of people that are interested in one of these perspectives. They are either technically interested, they are interested in the business opportunities, they might be interested in the regulatory changes, or they want to see where is this society going with using our personal data. So this business, legal, technical sandwich, BLT sandwich, is really the thing. There are people from very different backgrounds, and right now we have what we call MyData local hubs. This slide is not even the newest, so I think we have some 20 different hubs in different parts of the world. So they are mostly concentrated in Europe, and but there are some others like in Japan and Taiwan and Brazil, and a couple of in the North America as well. Most of these hubs are some not very big yet, but there are like 5 that are really robust and thriving projects where there are companies involved. Like I mentioned, this company that we or this project that we are running in Finland, it's called Trustee. So it grew out of this MyData Hub that has been working in Finland for 2 years now. So we have had every second month we have meetings with the companies, and they have been learning about personal data management. They have been learning about self-sovereign identity, and over time, when there is enough understanding on the basics, there is also willingness to start investing money and piloting and doing real stuff. And that's what's happening at least in Finland. It's happening in France, it's happening in the Netherlands, and it's starting to happen in some of these other hubs. And I think we have been running a couple of meetups also on the self-sovereign identity part before knowing about SSI meetup. This is new thing, so we ran those on last year, but we are thinking that we could actually in the MyData Hub in Finland we could run SSI meetups in physical form, and that's also the way to grow the community. So if you are interested in personal data side, you can also set up one of these hubs and start collecting interested people. We help how to get it started. And MyData is also a conference. It's a big one. This happens now for the 3rd year in a row. In the end of August, August 29 to 31st in Helsinki, Finland, beautiful capital city of our country. So you are very welcome to join the conference. It's rather big, I think. It's 3 days, and last year we had some 700 people. We are expecting it to grow a little bit, maybe 1,000 might be hard to hit, but at least 800, 900 people. And then we had people from more than 30 countries last year, so it's really international. It's all in English, and half of the people, more than half of the people are foreigners, so only less than half are from Finland. And it's also quite varied in the background, so roughly half of the population are coming from companies, businesses, but then there are a strong participation from the governments and NGOs and researchers like myself, and then some hackers and activists that are just individually pushing this agenda forward. And yeah, go to mydata2018.org. You will find, maybe you can sign to the newsletter. We are going to publish the program of the conference next week on May 23rd, just before the GDPR day, which is May 25th. So we are going to push some marketing in the social media, and here you see the different topics. We are looking for use cases. We are looking for collective personal data management when it's not only about me, how to make like social good with personal data. Then the interoperability track, that's like really the key for this self-sovereign identity. So there are lots of experts from different building standards and using them. So that would be the home of SSI in the conference. Then we are looking for the data portability article in the GDPR. There are some basics of the MyData movement, and we are looking at the ethical use of data, for example, in artificial intelligence. There is the future scenarios, what will happen in 30 years in personal data world, and how personal data will change the world in the future. And then, of course, the businesses and what this makes for the businesses. And also there is the design workshop, because it's really crucial to have the user-centric design in core of everything here. So I guess it's like 1 minute to 1 hour. So it's my time to say thank you a lot, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Hey, Jogi, that's great, awesome. I mean, I don't see any questions right now, but I have one question for you, which is, how is MyData organized? Is it like what is the legal structure? Was it like more of a social movement? If it's a social movement, how are you organizing yourselves? And I just see one question coming in. Oh, just awesome talk. Thanks so much from Jonathan. So thank you very much, Jonathan.
So thanks for thanking. So MyData is currently like loosely coupled network of different projects and people and organizations, and it's growing fast. But we are going to get it organized as a global organization. Non-profit organization, and there is a meeting in Lyon in France on June 19th to 20, where we actually it's just the last meeting before the official launch of the organization, and we are aiming to launch MyData Global Organization as part of this year's conference. There is lots of work to do, all the legal stuff, etc. But if we are not able to make it yet in the conference, at least by the end of this year, and there is really need for that. So it would be organized kind of being the mother organization or platform for these local hubs, so that they would have actually official backing for their doing, and then it would be also kind of industry alliance for these new kind of players in the field and organizations that are building tools and technologies and businesses for human-centered personal data. So it will be organized as a global not-for-profit organization.
Great, awesome. So I think there are no other questions coming in. Just to mention to everyone, this will be appearing soon in all social media channels from SSI Meetup. So if you don't have Telegram, please join Telegram. We have a Telegram group there, or you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and all those other channels. Of course, you can also subscribe in the newsletter channel. We will be talking next week, Monday, with Elizabeth Vinieri, who's the Global Policy Council for Evening, about GDPR and SSI. And that will be next Monday, 5:30 European time, and that's 8:30 Pacific time, Mountain time. And yeah, Jogi, thank you very much for joining us. I'll let you know as soon as we have this online, the recording and the slides and everything, and we will share it all across media. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. I will be following the upcoming episodes as well. This is good initiative.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.